us. And joining us now with more on the flotilla with the latest is human rights lawyer and CEO of the International Legal Forum, Arsen Ostrovsky. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, the Selfie Flotilla has been stopped peacefully by the IDF with sandwiches and water. This was clearly a PR stunt, and we'll get more into that in a moment. But what has the world reaction been to this flotilla so far?
Well, I think you're right. First of all, this was a Selfie Flotilla. This was not a humanitarian mission, despite the fact that that is how Greta and her crew sought to spin this and portray this. This was essentially a group of self-righteous provocateurs and activists seeking nothing more than a PR stunt and to provoke the Israeli army, something which the IDF did not bite, and therefore I would consider this quite a failed mission from Greta and her crew in that sense. They did manage to get some publicity and, of course, calls from some of the usual suspects from the UN and some of the human rights supposed organizations demanding that the ship be allowed to breach the blockade and reach Gaza. But of course, that did not happen. I think the IDF and the Israeli authorities acted as well as could have been expected under the circumstances to stop this ship.
Mm-hmm. And, we say PR stunt also in part because the boat was carrying just a few boxes of aid, which really wouldn't have had much or any real impact. And, of course, completely promotes the false narrative that Israel isn't sending in aid to Gaza, which we know it has sent in millions of tons of aids. So why is Israel unable to get this message across to the world?
Well, I think Israel is certainly trying to get this message across, but the reality is if we're dealing in an issue of pure numbers, it's a very difficult task. So we have a lot of challenges ahead of us in terms of the way the media portrays this, in terms of the number of activists that are online. For example, Greta herself has millions of followers, which I suppose leap at every word she says. But I think Israel did quite a good job in this case, not just Israel, but also civil society organizations supportive of Israel in this case, to really expose the hypocrisy of Greta and her crew members, the fact that had they truly cared about helping alleviating the concerns of the Gazan people, they would have directed their aid to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Had they really cared, they would have spoken out to condemn Hamas for stealing and taxing the aid and viciously beating up Gazan civilians for trying to reach it. They would have certainly spoken out if they truly cared about human rights concerns around the world, whether the famine in Yemen or whether in Boko Haram we've seen children being kidnapped. And of course, they could have raised the plight of the hostages if they truly cared. But they didn't, and I think at the end of the day, they were nothing more than a group of useful idiots and willing pawns for Hamas, only emboldening their propaganda.
Mm-hmm. Now, Greta had the audacity to pre-record a video message and say that she had been kidnapped by the IDF, never mind the fact that she tried to illegally enter an active war zone. But, really outrageous that she's calling herself a hostage and that she spent the past week on a yacht publishing pictures of her smiling and enjoying life. And there are 55 actual hostages in Gaza, people who were kidnapped, who are being beaten and starved for months on end. And, I want to ask from a legal perspective, what consequences will there be to her actions? I mean, she did break the law after all.
She did, in fact, break the law, and we should also reiterate that Israel is fully entitled under international law to enforce a blockade of Gaza. They're entitled to this under the London Declaration, under the San Remo Declaration as well. And we also need to remember that in 2011, after the Mavi Marmara, the predecessor flotilla, the UN itself established a panel led by former New Zealand Prime Minister Clive Palmer that also reiterated that, in fact, Israel was entitled to establish a blockade in the area precisely because of the threats emanating from Hamas. So Israel was entitled to establish the blockade and enforce it, and in trying to breach it, of course, Greta was violating not only the rules of international law and engagement, but also Israeli law as well. How we proceed from that, that also is up to the Israeli authorities from what we've seen so far. And I think the Israeli authorities, again, have done this very smartly. Not only did the IDF, I think, act in a very dignified and professional manner in stopping the boat, the defense minister has also said that the boat will be towed to the port of Ashdod, where the contents, which, by the way, is probably less food items than there were flash cameras and photography equipment for their staged show, that whatever aid there was there will be delivered to the people of Gaza through the Humanitarian Foundation. But I think one other important element here as well is that the Defense Minister said that the crew members, including Greta, will be forced to watch the 43-minute video of the Hamas atrocities from October 7. I think that will be exceptionally powerful because ultimately this flotilla did nothing other than to promote and embolden Hamas and to whitewash their crimes. So I think it is only fitting that they actually be forced to watch those very crimes and understand the actions which they were seeking to support.
Okay. Absolutely. Arsen Ostrovsky, thank you so much for joining us and for your insights today.
Thank you.